Hi, welcome to the Anti-Politica channel. I am Jovan Grahovec. I'm Serbian American and also professor of strategic management, currently on a break due to the widespread vaccine mandates across American universities. Today I want to talk about tennis and what I believe is a unique opportunity that tennis players have to claim ownership of their sport and fight vaccine mandates that will be beneficial to them, but also show the way to others and help other less powerful groups who cannot fight back in a similar fashion. In the last video, I spoke about students, soldiers, nurses. These are all very vulnerable populations that find it very difficult to fight against their institutions that are imposing these mandates on them. So tennis players have a unique opportunity, and I will talk about that in a second. Other sports, interestingly, because the many sports that are highly watched and highly popular are team sports, it's more difficult in those sports to fight back vaccine mandates. We had a recent example of the Kansas City Royals who had to travel to Toronto to play the Maple Leafs, and because Canada imposes strict restrictions and requirements to be vaccinated in order to enter Canada, 10 of their players could not go with them, which is profoundly unfair. And as I argued in the previous video, given the fact that the vaccinated can still get sick and transmit the virus, there is no public health justification for these mandates. So I believe that tennis players can fight back in an interesting way that this crazy situation is actually making possible. It is well known that crises and unfavorable situations sometimes create opportunities, and this is something that we study in strategic management very often. And there is that saying that if life gives you lemons, you should try to make lemonade. That is, turn the situation around, remain optimistic, and do as well as you can given the situation. I think that interestingly, in the current situation in the sport of tennis, tennis players have an opportunity to make an awesome lemon cake, not just lemonade. Tennis has been really abused this year by various governments, and tennis associations were not really willing to stand up more forcefully and fight the insanity. It all started with Australian Open and the well-known case of Novak Djokovic, who tried to follow all the rules and go to the tournament, but was eventually kicked out of the country by the government because they objected. They were afraid that he would discourage people from getting vaccinated. There are 4 major tournaments every year in the sport of tennis, the first one being Australian Open, then it's on to the French Open, and we have to give credit to the French government and the organizers of Roland Garros in Paris that managed to have a tournament without any insanity, any restrictions. Everybody was able to participate, and that was really, really good. Unfortunately, that was the only tournament of the year that ended up being normal, because already the following tournament in Wimbledon, the British government prevented basically all Russian players from participating, which is profoundly unfair and totally unjustified. Athletes have nothing to do with politics. They didn't invade anybody, they didn't bomb anybody, they're not responsible for the situation. So it's completely unfair to take it out on the athletes, these big political and military conflicts around the world. So that was completely unjustified. It, in my view, and in many tennis fans' opinions, it really damaged the tournament. And now we are on to the fourth and the final Grand Slam big tournament of the season in the United States. And here, even though the tournament again is not imposing any requirements, any any vaccine or mask or any other kind of mandates on the athletes, thankfully. But the US government requires everybody entering the country with a foreign passport to show proof of vaccination. And one of the top players in the world these days, a fellow Serbian whose name is Novak Djokovic, has a very strong belief that whether you take any medication, whether you get vaccinated or not, is your decision between you and your doctor, and nobody should mandate that you take any medication that you want. That's nobody's business. So his strong belief in this regard is preventing him from taking part in the U.S. Open, and again, that's going to damage the tournament, and it's completely unnecessary. So this has to stop, and if tennis players are able to pull it off, it will help everybody else, and it will be a very kind of visible lesson taught to various authorities who think that they can arrogantly impose these things on their subjects or on the people that they're in the position to impose this on, which is again something that's not fair. I wish I had made this video earlier on, because it could have maybe generated some ideas in the run-up to the Wimbledon championship and galvanized action of solidarity with the Russian players. It's probably somewhat late for the US Open, even though maybe a mini version of what I'm going to suggest in a minute is still possible for the US Open. So I'm thinking about the Australian Open that's coming up in January. There is time to organize, and I don't expect the Australian authorities to backtrack and remove their vaccine and other requirements. And if anything, knowing the situation down under, it seems that they're more likely to impose additional restrictions and require a certain number of boosts or a certain recent vaccination on all the players. So the madness is likely to become even more pronounced, in my view, and it's completely unlikely that they will remove those requirements, knowing how governments work, and it's time for the players to fight back. I think that among the top 100 players, there are 3 that are known to be unvaccinated, and if, as I expect will happen, additional boosts will end up being required. It could be that additional players will basically think that, okay, enough is enough. I don't want to be boosted every 6 months, given the emerging evidence that, if you're young and healthy, it could be that the vaccine carries with it a bigger risk than the disease itself. So I expect that the number of players who are annoyed or completely against these requirements is going to grow. So how could they resist and basically teach a lesson the authorities of various governments that think that they can impose these mandates, and because it's foreigners, nobody will pay attention? The idea that I want to propose is that the players can form a partnership. And open a window during which you invite all players from the ATP list to sign up for the alternative tournament to the Australian Open. and own that tournament. This can be a player-owned initiative in which each player that signs up gets a number of shares that's proportional to the number of points that they have on the ATP list, and they can have their own alternative tournament in a place that doesn't have any of this insanity going on, a place that can organize a Grand Slam tournament but doesn't impose vaccine or other insane mandates on the players. So the first place that comes to mind, there could be additional ones, but the first place that comes to mind is Rio. Rio has hosted recently an Olympic tournament, so they have all the facilities. They're probably ready to go. Brazil is a friendly, hospitable country. Rio de Janeiro is a wonderful, great city to host this kind of tournament. So that would be my candidate that I would approach about this joint venture of organizing an alternative, really open, really inviting tournament that would not discriminate anybody, and vaccinated players would be welcome as well. So the idea is to form a partnership, give everybody who signs up a number of shares that's proportional to their number of points on the ATP list, and then own this tournament. This organization would allocate nice amounts of money for the winners and the finalists and the semi-finalists and all participants based on the performance. And then they would also sign a deal, maybe a profit sharing or some kind of this details could be hammered out pretty easily, I believe, with the venue. And then the remaining profits would be split among the players according to the number of the shares that they put in, and these would be again proportional to how many points the players have on the ATP list. I suspect that many tournaments, and especially Grand Slam tournaments, generate fantastic amounts of money through advertising and streaming rights and all these things that this partnership could sign and explore some kind of innovative arrangements with contracts with streamers and so forth. So all these things could be dealt with and could probably generate an amount of money that would be close to what Grand Slam tournament generates. And I suspect that the players would be pleasantly surprised. I suspect that the Australian Open, Wimbledon, and all these Grand Slam tournaments generate just tremendous amounts of money. And even though they give really, really nice prizes to the winners and the finalists and others who perform well in the tournament, they retain a lot of money. And even if a player is vaccinated, it's interesting how this craziness and the desire to impose these mandates and then exclude this group and exclude that group and pursue this political goal or that political goal, or basically pursue the goals of big pharma companies at the expense of the players. That can, and it would be wonderful if we could see that can backfire on those who are doing these things. If the Australian government, and I suspect that they will try to push their COVID agenda, if they become too arrogant and if they try to push the athletes too far, this would be a great way for the athletes to respond. And this in tennis is possible given that it's an individual sport and it's driven by individual players, and matches between top players in a final are likely to generate a lot of viewership. And basically, if enough players sign on to this deal, they can really fight back against the Australian Open. I would even start it in the second week of the Australian Open because I think it's kind of too early on the heels of Christmas. It lasts for 2 weeks. So if this alternative tournament starts as the first week in the Australian Open ends, that way the tournament could avoid overlapping with the finals of the Australian Open, whoever ends up participating there. But then the finalment of the true and truly open Australian Open alternative would follow the following weekend. So it wouldn't really take away from the finals and the finalists who decide to play and sign on to the Australian Open, but would preclude everybody from participating in both. So I think it's time for a showdown, and tennis players can do it, whereas baseball players playing for Kansas City Royals are pretty powerless, given the media exposure of top tennis players, and given their fan bases, and given that the sport is individual and it doesn't really matter where the match is played. If the match and the tournament are sufficiently high powered, they will attract lots of attention. So that's the idea that I'd like to present here. And if you like this idea, please like and share this video. Maybe we can make it viral, and maybe it can reach enough players and enough people who might be willing to organize this. I would love to help organize this if anybody should want that, but I doubt that would be the case. But in any way, please share and like this video if you like this idea, and also if you'd like to subscribe to this channel, you're more than welcome to. We make videos covering various social, political, and societal issues in Serbian, if it's related to Serbia narrowly, but we also talk about lots of international topics and issues related to the United States. So roughly 50% of our videos are in English. So if you'd like to follow us, that would be greatly appreciated. And we promise that you won't get too many notifications because we make videos only once in a while, once in a couple of days. So you won't be bothered by too many notifications if you sign up. Make a lemon cake. If you're a tennis player, if you could do this would be poetic justice, and it would probably revolutionize the sport of tennis. I'm not saying that all Grand Slams and all tournaments should be challenged, but it would be nice if among the top 4 tournaments, among the 4 Grand Slam tournaments in tennis, one ends up being player owned in this way, if players claim the ownership, and that would increase their bargaining power with other tournaments, and there would be no need to basically displace other tournaments and threaten others. There is also this thing called tradition, but I think that, given what we saw in Australia earlier this year, and especially if they continue to be arrogant and continue to push their luck, then it would be completely justified for the players to fight back, and the world at large would appreciate that, because we all need to fight this COVID madness and preserve our bodily integrity and our medical rights. So the players would be basically working for themselves, claiming ownership of their sport, and they would probably be pleasantly surprised by the amount of money this idea may generate for them in the end. And they would do a good thing for the world, in the sense that governments need to smarten up and stop pushing the limits of what people can tolerate. And if we end up with one player-owned tournament that's played in a BRICS country rather than in Australia, so be it. The world is changing rapidly, and this would be an awesome thing if we could pull it off. With that, thank you all so much. I'll see you next time.